making the most of government benefits or family assistance benefits. Now we want to move on to the cost of raising your children. I know it sounds a bit negative in terms of focusing on cost of raising your children, but as a financial advisor or financial planner, that's certainly something that we do focus on in terms of making sure that you've got adequate financial resources to give the family the lifestyle that you want them to have. So in terms of how much does it cost, there's been a few studies conducted over the years with varying results. I don't think anyone knows necessarily the exact number. It depends on your own lifestyle and your own circumstances as to what things cost. But we've got a chart here with what these studies have suggested. So the cost of raising a child until they're financially independent, I think you can glean from that, that's around the 18 to 21 years of age. The federal government did a study in 2009 which said it was around $400,000 to raise a child. The National Centre for Economic Modelling did a study in 2007 which suggested it was a higher figure at around the $500,000 to $525,000 mark. Dr. Paul Henman, the University of Queensland, he did a study in 2005 which suggested it was $600,000, and Mark McCrindle, who's a social researcher, did a study in 2009 suggesting it was $1 million. Obviously the spread between the high end and the low end there is significant, you know, $1 million down to $400,000. Suffice to say, I think one thing that we do know is that the cost of raising a child is a significant financial expense and one that really does require adequate planning and foresight. Of the most significant expenses, I guess, is schooling and education costs for your child. Now, I spend a lot of time discussing with my clients when we first meet what sort of schooling, have they given any thought to that for their children and what they'd like to do. And everyone has a different view in terms of private school, Catholic school, independent school, public school. So it's a mixed bag, and certainly is for my clients in terms of what sort of schooling they'd want. But if they're looking at the Catholic and independent schools or the private schools, it's certainly a significant expense that needs to be factored into your financial planning. I've got on the first dot point on the chart there is Catholic and independent school. The average cost of school fees for all years back in 2008 was $5,000 a year, so that's all school years. If you're thinking private school, you're looking at around $14,500 as an average cost in 2008 for all years of private schooling. I'd say it's obviously a big difference between the Catholic and independent and the private schools. But I guess what happens with school fees is they become exponentially expensive towards the end of the schooling. So the Year 12 school fees are quite significant. So I've just got up on the chart here some well-known Sydney, which is obviously where I'm from, schools and what it costs to attend Year 12 at those schools. So we've got St Ignatius College at Riverview there. They're around 18,000. Scots College is 20,000. Sydney Grammar's around 22.5. King's School's around 23. And Skeggs is around 24,500. Now obviously that's a massive expense in terms of schooling, and it's probably not something that most people can just have within their spare cash flow at the point in time. So it's important to actually think about how you're going to put money away and start saving for that expense. So to put it in some sort of numbers so you can comprehend what it's going to cost today or how much you should think about start putting aside to meet this future expense, to spend $5,000 a year, so that's the cost, the average cost in 2008 of Catholic and independent school fees in all years in 13 years time. The reason why I calculate it to be in 13 years time, so obviously if you have a child this year entering high school in 13 years time, you need to start saving now $150 a month to make sure you've got that money available. If you're thinking private schooling, well obviously that's more expensive at $14,500 a year. In 13 years time you want to start spending that, you need to start saving $430 per month. Importantly, this is just to cover the cost of high school. It doesn't cover the cost of primary school, in particular if you're looking at private or Catholic schooling in primary school as well. The moral of the story obviously is the sooner you start saving the better, because it's important to make sure that you've got these financial commitments covered. If you can't afford to cover them all, I don't endorse just throwing your hands up in the air and not doing anything. The more you can save and the sooner you can start saving, obviously the better. You've got a few options in terms of saving for school fees, so we'll address each of these just quickly. So you can purchase a pre-packaged education savings plan. So companies like ASG, I know they offer these pre-packaged plans. What they are is where you pay a certain amount each month or week or whatever suits your cash flow. But basically they give you that money back once your child's attending school. They are a tax-paid structure. So what we mean by tax-paid structure is that whatever they invest in, the tax is paid by the actual plan itself. The income from the investments doesn't flow down to you as parents. So it can be tax effective if you both earn over $180,000 a year. The reason why it's $180,000 a year, that's when the top marginal tax rate kicks in at the moment. In my opinion, having looked at these from time to time, I do find the fees relatively high. I think from speaking to parents who have had these in the past, they find it hard to withdraw their money if they need to. So they lack a bit of flexibility. And I think when you're trying to work out exactly what they're investing in, they're not as transparent as some other investment options. So it's hard to necessarily identify if there's any risk associated with the investment, who the counterparties are, and exactly how the thing works. Now we'll look at managed funds. Managed funds are just a pooled investment structure where you pool all your money in to invest in a variety of investments, be it property, shares, or fixed interest. So you can generally choose different investment options in a managed fund. They are tax effective if you're purchasing a fund with Australian shares. So Australian companies, we have this ability to pass on the tax paid by a company to a unit holder in a fund through the franking system. So we get a company pays tax, you can pay a franked credit down to you as a unit holder, which can be tax effective for you. It's obviously flexible and you can stop it at any time, so that gives you flexibility as your circumstances change in the future to stop it. And likewise, you can withdraw your funds generally within 7 days if needed. So if you've depleted your emergency funds for whatever reason, you might have been redundant or laid off for a period of time, you've at least got access to this money if required to reprioritise your goals and objectives. So what you set today might be private school, might be your objective, but if in 5 years' time, for whatever reason, you've lost your work and can't find new work, then you're going to need to reprioritise your goals, and this might be something that you can tap into to sort of top up your immediate expenditure needs. Managed funds are a very cost-effective way of investing. It gives you economies of scale. You get a wide choice of investments. And look, historically speaking, not that that's a guarantee of the future returns, but it offers higher long-term returns than cash, investing in cash options like bank deposits. The next option is to open up a mortgage offset account. Now, simplistically, a mortgage offset account is a bank account that sits alongside your home mortgage. The balance that you hold within your mortgage offset account reduces the interest cost payable on your mortgage. There is no interest paid into it as such. It's an interest saving on your mortgage. Given there's no interest paid into it, it's a tax-free account. There's no interest, there's no tax. It is quite flexible. It's just a bank account. You can get your money out at any time. Although what I would say is it requires discipline to work effectively. So you might, what I mean by discipline is that you might be putting your money into your offset account for your future education costs. You might be putting money into an offset account to save up to buy a new car. You might be putting money into an offset account to have a holiday in the future or something along those lines. So it's difficult to keep track of your money in terms of education purposes, not specifically sitting there for one purpose. And the other thing I would note is that certainly for a number of my clients, the house that they're living in today won't be the house that they intend to live in when their children are in high school years. So when you've got your offset account, it can get lost when you upgrade or sell your house. So what I mean by getting lost is that it just sits there almost as equity in your property. So when you purchase that new property and you might have 50, 60,000 set aside for school fees, and you find this property that you really like, it's very tempting just to draw on the offset account, use that money to purchase a house, and sort of lose track, I guess, of your longer term financial objectives in terms of having money set aside for school fees. Again, looking at historicals over the long term, the returns in an offset account are generally lower than many managed funds, although there's no guarantee that past performance will reflect what's going to happen in the future. So that's covered off